Malrik is the newest character coming to Watcher of Realms. He's going to be on Raid Up tomorrow with Arrogance, and the takes on Malrik are on both extremes in pretty crazy directions. Is he going to be a Gandalf-level god that is a definitive triple S unit in this game, or is he no good at all and a big overhyped mess? Frankly, the answer is definitely in the middle. He's a good hero. He's a good hero. That's kind of, he's not amazing. He's just a good hero. There's a couple pieces of content he's going to be awesome for. But overall, if you have a full roster, you probably won't use him very much except for maybe one or two key places. And if you don't have a full roster, you'll probably use him a lot. That's kind of what it comes down to. He's just a good hero. He's got pretty solid damage. It's above average. And he's got a unique support capability that, because it is unique, is stackable with other support capabilities. So all in all, he's just good. He's absolutely not Ingrid or anything broken, crazy God mode. And he's also definitely not trash. Anyone would find some use for him, and I'll discuss that in this video. But I really think if you're endgame, you don't need him. And if you're not, you could definitely consider going to get him, because I think you'd find use for him, especially since he's rated up alongside Arrogance. I'll have a video later on tonight in which I talk a lot about this banner and then give some general impressions on the banner tomorrow with Soul Cadence and Eunomia. This video, I really just want to focus on Malrik. Tomorrow, I'll have a video showcasing Malrik in action. I want to show him off in a traditional Guild Boss 1 Infernal comp, showing how you could use him, not with Hex, we'll explain that, but with Zeala 2. There's some weird funkiness in his kit that really makes it strange how you get to use him in boss content. And then I want to show him off in Gear Raid 1, which is a place they've hyped him for, and we'll try him in 122. Can he push a team that couldn't beat 122? You know, the new Gear Raid difficulties are coming, stage 22, 23, 24. 22 already is going to be really difficult for a lot of people. Can he be a piece to push you over the edge? We're going to find that out tomorrow. If you want to see some extensive comparative testing, really seeing how he can move the needle both in terms of his own DPS and being a support for another DPSer, definitely check out War Guide's video. I watched that whole thing earlier today. He did like 1 million runs in Guild Boss, tracked all the damage, so you can really get a specific sense of how much he can provide in terms of DPS and how much he can provide in terms of support, making another one of your DPS stronger. This video, I want to break down the kit very quickly. This video will not be long, and then I want to give my full review of this character. You know, I've gotten to play with him now. I've gotten a lot of time to synthesize the kit, and I just think, frankly, everyone wants a hot take. I don't think there's anything to be too hot about with this guy. He's just good. He's like a 7 out of 10 character, something like that. So without further ado, let's get into it. We got Malrik here. For clarity, I'm going to pop up in the test server. We're now on the Fastidious test server, and I'm going to make myself smaller. Why do I say clarity? That's because when I show you the skill ups now, they will all be at max skills, so we can get a sense of what he actually is able to do. Let's take you through the kit so quickly. The key feature of his kit is Wizard's Rune. So Wizard's Rune is actually two things. It is a buff. It's a support effect he gives to one of his allies. And also, depending on which ally he gives it to, if that ally is a ground unit or a platform unit, it is also the switch, the trigger, that determines which form he will be in for the fight until he leaves the field and comes back on. That's the only way you'll ever switch his form, after a specific ally has been granted Wizard's Rune and effectively flip that switch one way or another. So he's got his fire form and his frost form. It seems a lot more complicated than it actually is. The fire form is a single target magic DPS form. The frost form is an AoE DPS form that has reduced damage, so it's not as strong as the fire form, but that's because he's doing AoE, though I am disappointed that it's not such a potent AoE. It's 5 enemy units. So it's like definitely like a nice multi-target, or a limited AoE is how you can think of it. And then this form also brings some crowd control effects. Wizard's Rune, as you can see, doesn't just serve as the trigger between these two forms at the start of the battle, determining if he'll be a Fire Malrik or a Frost Malrik. It also is a support buff he gives to one ally. It increases attack, defense, and HP of the Rune Bearer by 15%. So all those three main base stats, they get a 15% boost. Keep in mind, this is like applied to the base stats. It's not applied to whatever attack, defense, and HP you build on to your unit and then deploy them. So, if your unit has 5,000 base attack, the attack buff from Wizard's Rune will be an additional 750 attack. It will not scale off of whatever crazy amount of attack you have already built onto that character when you deploy them. It scales off of the base stats. One very quick and unique thing with Malrik I want to demonstrate is his Wizard's Rune buff is applied to whichever the next ally deployed in his attack range is, and it is instantaneous. So it happens the second that ally is deployed in his range. So he is the only unit in the game that can fully buff both Anora and Labor. Labor's Anora's summon. Because Labor takes a couple seconds to be summoned, and because the Wizard's Rune is applied immediately, both Anora and Labor get the 15% attack, defense, and HP boost. I want to show you that so quickly now. So let's just head into here in my Guild Boss 1. Elwyn is not an Invig or anything, so that won't mess up our results. First thing, let's just place Anora here. Let's place Elwyn, and we're not going to use Malrik. Let's just get a sense of the numbers here. So it looks like Anora's hitting for 47k, Labor's hitting for 67. Labor should hit for 78 if a Winter's Bite goes on. So let's just wait for that. There's a 78. See, now he's always hitting for 78. Those other things are the Noxious Breath. But the numbers there are 47k, 67k, and 78k. Let's get this going now with Malrik. So the way you use him, we're going to point him just down so he's not hitting the dragon, so we don't have extra numbers to worry about. Now, if I deployed Elwyn next, she would get the buff. She would get the Wizard's Rune if she's in Malrik's attack range. So you want to do... actually here it would be fine because I pointed him down. But we're going to do Anora here. This fits in the attack range. And now you'll see this little wizard logo appears. Now there's going to be this thing spinning around her. That is the buff. You see that little Wizard's Rune buff. We get the healing with Elwyn. And now let's get the numbers. Ready? 78, 47. Now it's getting placed. So now 54, 78, 54, 78, and then 89 with the Winter's Bite. So we went from 47, 67, 78 to 54, 78, 89. So you can see it's applying not just to Anora's basics, but also that 89 and that 78. Those are Ymmerit's hits. So that is pretty crazy. So if you're an Anora lover, Malrik is a really nice synergy. They also both have dual faction and esotericist. I just want to show that very quickly because that is one thing that's really, really cool about him. Okay, let's finish off with this kit now, and then we'll quickly go into my conclusions and my final review of this character and where I think he'll be good. So yeah, that Wizard's Rune buff is granted to whomever the next hero deployed in his range is. So be careful with that. And as you might have seen with Anora, she's a platformer. She switched him to Frost form. When he was out on the field without her for those couple seconds, he was in Fire form. This is key. His base deploy is always Fire form. So if you put a ground unit in his range, he'll stay in Fire form as the next ally in his attack range. If you put a platformer, it will switch him to Frost form. So that is really, really, really essential to know. He always starts in Fire form, and then it takes a platformer being next to switch him to Frost form. So he's got these basic attacks here, very simple, 120% magic damage one time to one enemy. That's always the case, whether he's in Frost form or Fire form. So this really does kind of make his Frost form a little stinky, in my opinion. Like, it can be really usable, and you'll see that in the Gear Raid 1 demonstration tomorrow, but the things only really change when you ult with him. That's what changes the basic attacks to the Fire form attack, which is this Fireball, or the Frost form attack, which is the Blizzard. You do get from the basic attacks, you can trigger this Elemental Covenant over here, this little passive, and then you'll do Fire Blast in Fire form and Ice Storm in Frost form. But overall, his basic attacks kind of suck when he's in Ice form, except for when he's ulting, so those basic attacks get revved up, or when he triggers this passive every 5 basics. I wish he had a lower attack interval, though that does come if you can get him A3, but that leads to a lot more triggers, which is just a lot more exciting. But as it stands now, his base attack interval, let me show it to you over here, is the very standard 2.6 seconds that we see for mages, especially the single target mages. So I guess at least he doesn't have the AoE mage typical stuff. All right, let's wrap this up. The AoE here, when it's activated, this is going to last 20 seconds. His attack is increased. This is regardless of form. And then all his basic attacks will be transformed into a fire attack or a blizzard frost attack, depending on the form. So the Fireball, this is going to be 100% damage as a triple hitter, so that's pretty good. 300% damage every basic, and he's inflicting burning with every hit. So really, really easy to get burning on with this ability when he's in fire form. Makes sense. And then the Blizzard here, it's going to change all the basics to 140% AoE damage one time to up to 5 enemies in range, and they inflict Winter's Bite. So all those attacks inflict Winter's Bite. That is really cool. That is really good crowd control, but that isn't a lot of damage. All right, it really isn't. 140% as a 5-target hitter when already, when he's in Frost form, his damage is reduced by 25%. He performs pretty dang well as a single-target mage. When he's in Frost form, he does okay damage. It's like fine. It's nothing special in the slightest, and he's got some crowd control. But you cannot rely on him as a DPS when he's in Frost form. Now we've got these two things that trigger every 5 basics. Like I told you, there's the Fire Blast. This hits pretty hard, 400% damage one time to one enemy, and like everything he does fire-related, it inflicts burning. And then we have the Ice Storm. This is going to be 45% AoE damage. Again, only 5 enemies. I guess there's the main target and the surrounding 5 enemies, so essentially it's 6 targets. It lasts 4 seconds, and each time it triggers once per second for 4 seconds. It's going to have a 50-50 chance to do Winter's Bite. Finally, he has an additional support capability. When he ults, whichever ally has the Wizard's Rune gets 10% of rage. It's kind of a burst of rage like Leia has. Actually, very comparable to Leia because it's also 10%. And every time he does this, so every time he ults, he permanently increases his attack. This can stack up to 5 times. So for long fights, by the end, he'll have a 25% additional attack boost. That's really good. Also, if you deploy him in a certain way, like you deploy him at the end, so he never gives anyone the Wizard's Rune, then he will apply that 10% rage boost to himself. So it allows him to cycle faster. I don't know why you would ever do that. He's not special enough that you wouldn't want to give the buff to someone else. That's not worthy. So you get a good sense of the kit there. I hope I made it really clear. I'm going to do the awakenings in 5 seconds in awakening. Here we have the A1. This is going to be increased damage to the Fire Blast, which gives vulnerability. The vulnerability kind of sucks and it doesn't last long, 10%. Who cares? The Ice Storm, this now inflicts freeze, and you're getting a trigger every 0.7 seconds instead of every 1 second from that storm. But it doesn't really matter that you're triggering more Winter's Bite because you're doing a freeze. This honestly I don't think was thought out very well. It's really only one more trigger over those 4 seconds. The A2 plus 300 attack, pretty nice. I didn't show the base stats, probably as good a time as ever to do it. You can say solid but standard at 4,600, almost 4,700 base attack. Everything else completely and utterly standard. I wish he had huge stats or something to make him feel a little more special. The A3 is his best awakening by a mile. This is specialized attack, the same kind of thing that Voroth or Falsia have. Sargok is another example. Basically, the same amount of attack speed built onto him compared to a normal unit is going to more dramatically reduce his attack interval. So he responds more effectively to building attack speed on him. It does lead to him being way faster, and this is his best awakening by a mile. The A4, penetration, really standard, ignoring 8% of magic resistance since he's a magic DPS. And then finally, 10% damage increase. This is so underwhelming for an A5. Right? It's just added on to the damage increase pile. So it's not like he's going to have a 1.1x multiplier on all the damage he was doing already. It's just added to whatever that total pile was. Then that is applied as one multiplicative thing. Then he does this Wizard's Incantation. So whichever ally, if they die while wearing the Wizard's Rune, it is a death prevention and they are restored with 50% of their max HP and they get a full cleanse of any debuffs. I don't see what content that's going to be special for, and here's a good moment for me to tell you what content he could be special for. Why don't I think that A5 is going to be special? He does not work in Guild Wars at all. And that kind of sucks because Guild Wars could be a place, Guild Wars defense, where he could have been really special. But because on a Guild Wars defense, all your units are deployed at the same time instantaneously, no one is the first ally deployed in his attack range, so no one gets the Wizard's Rune. Maybe they'll change this, after his release, and then he'll be a lot better. But as of now, he's just kind of not special there at all. And then remember, because no one's being deployed in his range, he just stays in single target mode. He stays in fire form. You would want him in Frost form to do some fun Winter's Bite comps, and then maybe you could give the Wizard's Rune buff to a platformer like an Ingrid or an Honora, and then that'd be huge. So if they give us a mechanism to do that, he'll be a lot more exciting, I think, overall as a unit for people interested in Guild Wars, but otherwise it's just not happening. They posted on Discord the official guide, posts, whatever recommendations, the content they thought he'd be good in. One place they listed was Gear Dungeon 1. This guy's going to suck in Gear Dungeon 1. Like, completely and utterly suck. This Winter's Bite, if it even works at all, completely pales in comparison to Slow. And the Winter's Bite, once it triggers the freeze, won't work, because on the later stages of Gear Dungeon 1, Gear Raid 4, you can't freeze the enemies. You can only slow them. His damage is not good at all for content like that where you need supremely good damage. I think he's very unusable there. I will say there's a pretty solid chance he can do a good job for Stage 9 and Stage 10 with the magic clone that comes down the left side in Gear Dungeon 2, Gear Raid 5. So that's a fun place. I think he's going to be excellent in Gear Raid 1 because you usually have a chief primary DPS and he can be sure to buff that one, and you don't mind that he's switching to Frost form because that will be his stronger form for Gear Raid 1. Aside from that, I do not think he'll be good in the arena. The only other places that leaves are boss areas, and I think against bosses, that will be his place to shine. He'll be good to very good depending on the boss. You can see, like, in Semra, he could be really nice because you get those nice attack stacks later on, but you just have to be really cognizant about who you give the Wizard's Rune to. It has to go to a melee unit. If he's in Frost form against a boss, that terrible AoE damage is not going to work against bosses, and who cares about Winter's Bite and stuff like that? So, yeah, you could have him buffing your Sung Wukong or your Kagiri, your Arrogance, something like that. That would be pretty dang solid, your Twyla, but you cannot have him buffing your Hex or your Silas or, your Praetus, your Ingrid, and I think that really does stink. I don't like that this whole form switch in his kit is determined by this ally placement trigger and who gets the Wizard's Rune. I just don't think it's conducive to a nice kit. He's still good enough to make it work for certain content, but overall, I think it really, really holds him back, especially in stuff like Guild Wars, as we discuss. So Semra, he'll be like pretty good, especially because Esotericist comps are going to become more meta, and Infernal comps are already pretty good. But Esotericist comps, once the Poison comp comes with Nasty and the gang, that will be good. For Guild Boss 1, really Nightmare 4 and Abyss 1, he should be pretty solid in both. Anyone that thought he was going to be like broken good in either, I don't know where that came from. Comparisons to some of the best characters in the game, I think that was just a lot of hopium and a lot of just, I don't know, wishing for the best. His damage is pretty darn good, so if you get him early on enough, he will definitely help you. But by the end, when you have all the options, I don't see him working. Yes, he can give about a 10% damage boost to whomever he gives the Wizard's Rune, but in the end game, when you have lots of good DPS units, 10% more damage to your top DPS is not going to be worth it in comparison to having another DPS instead of Malrik, who's really great, because Malrik is just good. His DPS in single target form is just good. I'm saving the last two places for last for a reason. The places he will shine the brightest, I do believe, are our two newest Codex bosses. So I think the Phantasmal Nightmare, the one that sticks and conquer, that will be his ultimate place to shine, because when you beat one mode, they clear all your units out and you have to redeploy. So you can take full advantage of his single target mode and then his AoE mode. That is very powerful. That is very, very, very good, right? Additionally, he should be really strong in the new boss, Mother of Crows. You have like your main summoner DPS, like your Honora, your Beatrix, something like that. He can be buffing them. And he'll go to Frost form, and his AoE capability with a little bit of DPS and a lot of crowd control should be really strong against all those birds flying around. So Malrik, I think all in all, if you're, anything but late in endgame, he'd be a great pickup for you, and especially if you don't have Arrogance, this is an exciting banner. Later on, I think he becomes more and more and more niche. In no way is that to say he's a bad hero. Obviously, content could come where he's pretty special. He's a very unique support with his support capabilities on top of being a solid DPS. So he'd be a great pickup, I think, for any account. But the way this game is trending, and we're going to talk about it in the second video today, do you go for good? If you have your eye on the end game, can you afford to go for good? Or do we have to just basically put all our attention and all of our saving and the direction of all our resources towards phenomenal, busted, triple S game breaking? And this guy is not that. But he is good. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I've been Fastidious. If you like my stuff, please like it, share it with your mother, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.
Fastidious.